made the case for providing further incentives, especially through the RPS for wood. I mean, when I saw that the comparative numbers with respect to jobs created per 1,000 RECs, I mean, I love solar. Solar is great, but it's less than 1 per 1,000 RECs, and it's what 20 some for biomass, thermal biomass. I thought, well, that's sort of the end of it could be the end of the argument. We know it's not, won't be the end of the argument, but it certainly is a very compelling reason. And knowing that I'm standing between you and lunch, I will be brief. I have a few comments to make about our efforts to include thermal biomass within Maryland's RPS. Everywhere I go, and I live in Northwest Baltimore County, I see scrap wood. Post-derecho, BG&E's been doing lots of tree trimming in my neighborhood, lots of neighborhoods. Took a walk down my street the other day. There were 2 houses with wood just stacked right in front of it. I don't know whether that's going to be sold or just taken to the dump. I certainly know that the wood from the tree in my own yard that came down from Hurricane Sandy, going to the dump, as well as all the other scrap wood that's generated just from my house. And so, myself as someone who's hardly an expert, and I can really just blame Dan Ryder for getting me interested in this topic, because I read a newsletter article he wrote about the value of thermal biomass and giving it renewable credit. But from my point of view, it just makes perfect sense. Shouldn't the state be providing financial incentives through the form of the RPS for using woody biomass for thermal purposes? Again, as opposed to sending lots of, at least the scrap wood, to the dump. So last year, the regular session from 2012, I introduced a bill, HB 1443. It was very late filed, and we just did it really just to start the discussion on this topic, which would have made energy from thermal biomass systems eligible for REC credit under the state's RPS. And of course, it's intended to build on what we know to be the renewable energy potential of wood. We know that not just because we know it from the statistics that have been presented today from everyone's experience, but because in Maryland's RPS, electricity that's generated from biomass sources is already eligible for renewable energy credit. And as I just learned, that type of energy generation using woody biomass is half as efficient as generating thermal energy. So it certainly makes sense to add thermal for REC credit. It also would build on SB 1004, which passed in the regular session, which gives RPS credit for thermal biomass systems that use poultry litter. So certainly there's already precedent, just like as well there's now renewable energy credit for geothermal systems. There is a precedent for broadening the reach of Maryland's RPS, not just electricity. And again, I think, as Dr. Strauss said, that's what most people think of when they think of energy systems. It's electric producing systems, not thermal. But I think we're realizing more and more that certainly thermal, of course, plays a big part of Maryland's energy system, and there are renewable energy systems out there that should be eligible for REC credit. So including thermal biomass systems within the RPS would have several benefits. They're all obvious, I think, to everyone here. Would provide a modest incentive, but nonetheless an incentive for the building of wood boilers. It would draw on a fuel source that is readily available, even if we're just looking at the intrastate sources for wood. They are substantial. They wouldn't flood the market. I think that an analysis that MEA did with Dan Ryder showed that using realistic estimates, it just might expand the source of RECs, at least in the first year, by 3%. So to the extent that anyone, such as utilities, are concerned about the impact of broadening the reach of the RPS to include new sources, such as woody biomass for thermal purposes, it's not going to swamp the market. It's not going to suddenly cause investments to be devalued in any material way. There are lots of these local fuel sources, wood chips from forest management, wood waste in urban, suburban areas, other sources. The jobs, I mean, it's been stated already more convincingly than I could ever say, but certainly from the gathering, the processing, the transporting of wood, create work for tree care crews, arborists, public works agencies, and others. And it would help us to meet the state's RPS goals, not an insignificant reason. Just a number of years ago, we included energy to waste within Tier 1 for RPS, in part based on the argument that as the state's RPS ramps up, there won't be enough sources of renewable energy. Well, here's one that we know truly to be clean and renewable. As was mentioned, New Hampshire, and you're Charlie, is that right? No, you're Charlie. Well, thank you. Thank you for the information that you gave to me. We'll certainly be looking carefully at how it's implemented in New Hampshire. Thank you for being the trend center. And I guess you have there's a carve-out in New Hampshire with a cap. So perhaps that could be a model here in Maryland. We will try again. Our bill won't be late filed, so hopefully it will get much more serious consideration. But we will be putting that bill that would grant renewable energy credit to thermal biomass systems back into the hopper. And with your support, hopefully it'll be successful. Thank you. Now, happy to take any questions.
I'm totally unfamiliar with the Maryland legislature, but who are you going to have to convince? Who stands in the way of broadening the thermal provisions to include biomass?
There is some concern among utilities about the impact. So that's at least preliminarily what we have heard. And so we have to make the case that it won't flood the market with new sources of energy that would get REC credit. So I think that is an argument that we have to provide very good evidence, and I think that we do. And I'm sorry I missed your presentation earlier, but I want to trade notes with you about your experience in New Hampshire.
I'll just add, Massachusetts is now looking seriously at this. I learned 2 days ago that there's a working group in Connecticut.
Great.
Meeting regularly with utility regulators and energy policy staff to discuss the idea. Bill Strauss mentioned the name, Governor LePage and others. Vermont has a study process underway to enact something they're calling a whole energy standard. So it starts from the point of fuel and technology neutrality rather than amending an existing electric RPS to include thermal.
Okay.
There are some western states, Oregon and Washington. So it appears to be an idea that is picking up some momentum.
Great. Very good.
Hi.
Hi, Kathy.
Good to see you. Do you have a bill drafted, and have we seen a fiscal note on a draft bill yet?
It would be, short answer is no. I haven't redrafted, let's see, it was HB 1443 from the 2012 session. Let me quickly check what the fiscal note, it was none. Yeah.
So often we've seen, in terms of advocacy in achieving a goal like this, stakeholder groups are some of the most effective advocates.
Yes.
From your perspective, which of the stakeholder advocates in renewable energy or in similar industries have been most effective, and how would you suggest that they make that argument?
You're certainly right, and thank you for making that point. I should have made it myself. In pressing the case for adding thermal biomass to the state's RPS, it will be important for stakeholders, as many of the individuals who are supportive of the concept who are here, to get involved in the process, both in talking to key committee members in the House and Senate, as well as helping present testimony. So I would be happy to talk with anyone and everyone who'd like to get involved in the process. When we've seen, I mean, really, it's not limited to just additions to the state RPS. Certainly, anytime there is forward movement with respect to state policy, it does take an organized effort by the stakeholders. I mean, there's just so much that myself and and a few other supportive legislators can do without the support of organized support from stakeholders who are supportive. So that would be very important.
It's like lunch is creeping in here. It's like the effect of lunch at the table is taking. Thank you very much.
Powerful incentive. Thank you. Yeah.
I think if you look at the afternoon
Thank you.
schedule, we have a lot of